we'll get started here. So, as I mentioned, Joy Connect Senior Leader, been involved with our product, our company. We've been around a long time. I've been with the firm 23 years. So a lot of this is not only based on our technology experience, it's also working with tons of clients, obviously, and the uniqueness or challenges of everybody. So I will also say, typically in my presentations, we have wide ranging groups on this, whether that's by industry or by complexity. And so I talk kind of in kind of all different levels of it, because some of you joining today might be just brand new to the word onboarding and you're trying to figure out how to set up your first onboarding experience. And some of you are quintessential OGs of the original gangster of obviously onboarding. So kudos to you, and hopefully there's some nuggets of knowledge in here for you. So let's jump into this. Let's start providing you guys some value. We're already 3 minutes in and you've learned nothing, so that's on me. So let's get started. So welcome everybody. Let's hop into today's presentation. I will note, if you're interested in any of the other topics too, if you go to our proteus.co website, which you'll see everywhere here, there are a lot of other webinars and resources around all of the topics that we're going through today. Prototypically, I usually start with a quote or two. Some of these are my favorite. So because everybody again is on a different spectrum, but if you're new to the game or you're in the game, the first quote makes you feel real good. That's always a great way to start, right? Let's celebrate. You're either looking into standardizing your onboarding and scaling it and making it more reproducible, or you already have one. So kudos to you. The other thing, for some of you who are on a lot of my calls or I've seen you before, talk to you, I'm very adamant about bringing the business side into onboarding. What I mean by that is financial impact, because ultimately for you as a leader in onboarding, or somebody doing the job of onboarding, or somebody thinking about building onboarding, all of those trains basically need to obviously correlate to revenue, because that's where you can get additional budget. And then also how important it is. I say this all the time, and it's true, especially in technology-based companies or data companies or even consulting companies, but definitely in technology services. About 30% of your churn starts in an onboarding experience that does not go well. And so that is a substantial number to the bottom line for your enterprise. And I can share additional resources on how to calculate that. You can plug in 2 or 3 numbers from your company, average deal size, lifetime value, all that, and it will spit out how impactful onboarding is to your financial security and bottom line as a firm. So I always like to cover that because it's an important area. Everybody kind of focuses on top line revenue or some of the other elements, but obviously understanding how important onboarding is, to success is 100% important. So 3 times I said important. I think you get the point. So we're gonna jump now into the actual point of the presentation, but I always like to start with that. This is another concept I typically cover also. So today's topic is obviously visibility. Well, why is visibility a problem, right? So visibility is a problem. That's the end state. So what's the driver of it? Like, why is this happening? Like, why is there, or are there visibility problems for a lot of us in onboarding? Well, a lot of it is what's on the screen here, right? So it's extremely complex. What used to be, air quote, relatively easy and straightforward has now, you got quite a bit of problems going on here. So let's just be candid, right? Because if we're candid with ourselves, then we can create areas of opportunity, right? So it used to be pretty simple, and now a lot of companies on both sides have 3 to 5 people on your company, and you might have different individuals, different silos, SMEs, other folks, everything on your side, and they might be in all different offices and remotely working, right? And then on the client side, why would it be any different? They got a lot of people. They got silos in their organization, and you need help and information from a lot of people on that side of the equation. So now you have an awesome environment of a ton of people on both sides who need to be collaboratively working together to get something done in X number of days. Hmm. What could go wrong? I'll let you fill in the dots there. And so this is the challenge. And the challenge is two independent and dependent, probably both, uh, teams need to get something achieved, right? And this inherently is the challenge because there's a ton of the quintessential devil in the details, right? There's a lot of things that have to be achieved and completed in order to get a successful onboarding on. Now, some of you on this call might have a what I would call a relatively fast onboarding, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or somewhere in that zone. Some of you on this call are like, Joe, we're in healthcare. Like it takes us 2 years to deploy. I get it. So there's a lot of or 3 years. If you're doing system, you're going to talk 3 to 5 year kind of deployments. Uh, yeah, I don't know. We had a client that like the onboarding team was more than 50 people over a 3 year period, and 30 of them switched out. Can you imagine that challenge? So I digress. But um, but the point being is, I think everybody understands the root cause of visibility challenges is that you have a lot of people and a lot of things that need to get done, and it's not linear, right? And I think everybody starts to understand that that's some of the underlying challenges that are in these uh, the overall process overall, right? So, okay, so 1 second here. I gotta let a few more people, and I apologize for my. Uh, oop, oop! I did something wrong. Hold up. Okay. All right. So continuing. So the environment, right? Everything is typically environmental, and then we start to kind of pull from there. So continuing on, obviously the high level challenge that many of you, why you're here or you're experiencing this at some sort of level, or it's starting to scare you because it's happening more and more. Um, the challenge is onboarding in many cases can lack a lot of visibility if it's not properly set up and have the right infrastructure. There's typically quite a bit of misexpectations, just being transparent. I think wink, wink. I think everybody knows kind of what I'm talking about there. They also, yeah, there's a lot of expectation management, and that has to be cleared out at the beginning. And then bottlenecks, obviously, this is the old, a little pebble in your shoe doesn't seem like a big problem until the onboarding continues on, and then it becomes a gigantic epic problem. And now you're burning months. Your TTV is going to hell in a handbasket. And so it just creates a lot of problems. So if you have different expectations, you know what happens, misalignment. So everybody's starting to get frustrated. We'll talk about many of this is just a challenge. I'll talk about where some of the challenges actually filter from the most or come up from or bubble up from the most. And then last but not least, if you are a leader in onboarding and or somebody doing the onboarding, your greatest challenge is trying to figure out when are we going to have this done? One, and also how do I manage my team, your internal team, their flow and account management and onboardings, and when can you start onboarding more clients if you do one at a time or 8 at a time or 40 at a time? You see what I'm getting at? Like there's a lot of cost and resource management, and if everything is unpredictable, then the only thing that is predictable is failure. And so or loss of revenue. Not failure like you're doing something wrong, but not optimal to the bottom line, right? So it's a huge challenge that has massive ripple effects across, again, not only your team, a lot of the other internal resources on your side, and of course the client satisfaction on the new client side, which we should all be celebrating because somebody has signed the line that is dotted for you. And this is supposed to be a very positive event. And very quickly out the gate, it has, in some cases, gone extremely sour. And I will note back to the earlier comment, 30% of churn starts in onboarding because there's massive frustration and or other challenges around that. All right. So again, just giving you kind of insights to kind of what to look for behind you and in front of you to kind of do this from the challenge perspective. We're going to unpack them, but just these are kind of real challenges there for you. So the impact. So again, besides just financial, I think some of these I covered, but these are just a lot of the things you know, sometimes these are the little nuggets that you hear about, and then you got to kind of look into them a little bit more to really kind of understand maybe where there's an area of oh, whoa, I apologize. That was me. It's like my first day. Like, come on, team. Like I told you I'm remote at a client site, so I got a little bit of different operation going on here. So I apologize, everybody. I did it again. Why am I doing this? This is hilarious. Okay, you can put it in the comments. F for presentation. Um, and now I'm sneaking ahead. So back to this. This is horrible. Sorry, team. That means we can only get better, right? Okay, so the impact of poor visibility, basically it's camp run amok. So a lot of things is like what's going on right here, like basically how I'm presenting right now. This is what happens when you have poor visibility. It all kind of connects, right? So you're losing momentum. You know what all these are. You've been a part of them, probably you've seen it, or when you've been onboarded by a product you're using. That's what I always say. Like, think about it when you're like being on and boarded by another company. And one of the anecdotes I always joke about with this is like, isn't it amazing that if you buy, I'm a native New Yorker, so if you buy a pie, right, online, you can literally watch it be made, right? Like it gets into a vehicle, you watch it come out of the oven, you see it around the corner, and then ding dong, you can see it's at your house, right? And there's a picture and a video of it being laid there, right? Like that's for a $10 transaction or $25 transaction, right? The whole, but in B2B, there's that much disconnect. You could be onboarding 100 grand, $1 million worth of software or services, and it's can't run amok. There's no visibility on it. Like you don't even know what's going on. The irony of that, right? Just play that out in your own head and map that to your own services. It's mind-boggling, right? Like, why is it so bad? And so that's what you have to do is tackle the problem. And then there's structure and some other things that we're going to walk through here. Ultimately, that if you have the right structure in place, you can start to create the visibility that you need. And of course, that increases the customer sat as you're going through the process. But I always love to mind map it to things like you've been a part of, right? Like that, ordering a pie. All right. So the opportunity. So I kind of creeped into that because once you can analyze, like we are being candid, kind of what your process looks like, and I'm going to share with you again 5 ways of improving that. And I'm very sensitive. I'm not inferring what you're doing now is wrong or anything. My whole spirit is about continuous improvement and getting better. You're going through phases of your own development, your company's development, the product's development, the service development. There's a lot of development going on. And I don't mean coding, I just mean evolution, right? And you might be getting into new markets. You might be selling to banks right now, and now you're going to sell into credit unions. Yes, those are totally different kind of enterprises. Anybody in financial services is chuckling right now. Same thing in healthcare. If you're doing small clinics, doc in a box, that's completely different than a healthcare system, right? And so ultimately, these are the things that excuse me, are very important. It's the devil is in the details, and so we'll kind of build out from there. So I'm always trying to be encouraging. Don't worry about if you're like, wow, we're not doing any of this now. That's fine. Just get started. Start simple, and then carry it forward. Next step, next step, next step, and you'll get there. So there is an opportunity, and the opportunity, obviously, everybody is seeing the screen. Is it when you start simple, you can then start to layer upon it and build it out for ultimately success. And so the difference though is not just the customer sat, it's the money. Like you're making um more revenue obviously for the company overall. So it's a big opportunity. I think I've touched on that multiple times. So the first, some of you are chuckling. I think a couple of current clients are on this one too, learning more about some things for themselves. But if you know us, meaning Proteus, if you know about Engage or anytime I'm speaking, you know the MPs are coming in, the mutual plan conversations coming in because it is a massive differentiator, and it's the most effective tool for creating visibility. And I'll kind of oh, one sec. I don't know what's going on here today, but something is different with the setup that I'm rolling with here. So this is why I apologize. Um, I don't, there we go. Now we're back on track. So mutual plans. So on the mutual plan concept, I'm sure some of you are familiar with this. And it's not a checklist because checklists are just very simple. Mutual plans is kind of more of a philosophy and then infrastructure to kind of deliver that. And for me, kind of one of the main components of this, um, to be very specific, is the word mutual. So a lot of times, even like checklists and all those concepts I was just talking about, like those feel like one person is telling the other person what to do, right? Or the other people of what to do. When in reality, mutual plans, a lot of people forget the word is mutual. And so that's working together to achieve something. And this is very, very critical to today's concept, of course, of how do you create visibility. Well, it's ultimately about herding the cats, clearly, breaking down silos on both sides, and collectively developing a plan that we can mutually agree with, set expectations and dates and assignments of everything out. Okay. So again, conceptually, it's not just sending your client an email and saying, please do these 8 things in an email, because that's not management and that's not mutual and that's not setting the right expectations and or identifying kind of blue herrings that could throw your group completely off track. And so I'm going to unpack this a little bit more, and then I'll show you one just to kind of, kind of bring some things to life so you can kind of visually understand. But remember, mutual is mutual. So it really is about working with obviously people from both sides of the organization, the internal champ. So you have an internal champ. The word internal champ is so popular in sales, but people really don't carry that through when it is. There's also an internal champ or a point person during onboarding. And so you're a quarterback, they're a quarterback. We got to mutually agree. And then we need to do something to divvy out all the things that need to get done downstream. Right. And so mutual plan, risk management, obviously identification of challenges, and then structuring it so that you do have visibility for the next stages. So let me kind of give you kind of the shared goals as I talked about here, timelines and transparency. You cannot not have visibility if you're properly using mutual plans. I mean, can you? Yes, of course. Could you prove me wrong? I'm sure. But in the spirit, you know what I'm talking about, 85%, 90%, 95%, somewhere in that zone, you really, because it's transparent, it's shared between everybody, everybody knows what's going on, and you're trying to find problems when they're smoldering before they become wildfires, right? We have a tagline in our company. I'm a big Smokey the Bear kind of thing, like we say Smokey the Bear, which is only you can prevent forest fires, right? So that kind of spirit, you wanna stop it before it becomes a big problem. So there's multiple components, obviously, in a mutual plan. It is not just a task for you to complete. It's structured, and I'll be candid, it's fun because you can start to think about your onboarding process as either the process or by person, by persona. So a lot of our clients actually deconstruct their onboarding process and have, I'm making this up for just today's sake, but like they might have 4 different mutual plans, and each one of them is for each key stakeholder in the relationship. So the CTO or the finance department, whatever. You can break it out that way as far as mutual plan, or an overall journey map or playbook, which is just centralized one, and then the people are all kind of coming in and out. That's for you to decide. We have clients, it's kind of like a Ford Chevy conversation. We have people who really want to go high persona, high specific, because that's how they like to do it. And then some of them want more of an overall, and there's lots of ways to achieve it. But I'm just at the core is making sure that you do have obviously some plans in place, obviously, to guide these individuals. So let me the benefits, I'll come back to this, but I do want to just kind of share just some key things that are very important around a mutual plan. So here's an example of a mutual plan in our tool set. Now, in our tool set, it's two-way facing. So if it has a key here, the client does not see that. That's internal facing only. If it doesn't, then this is obviously client facing. And of course, these are standardized, templated, everything by industry vertical, et cetera, et cetera. But the point here, from a milestone perspective, is making sure that it's in your kickoff meeting, you're laying out your entire process of what it's going to be structured in a way that makes sense to your client, and you're providing them with the why and like the purpose here, and then of course what you're needing to do with them, right? That's very, very critical because it's a two-way transaction, and again, you're not going to be around a lot of the time when your client is talking about to their own team members what we need to do to be successfully onboarded. Mutual. I'm not going to go too deep on this next concept, but I like to do a lot of pre-mortems. I'll share resources related to that. Typically in the launch strategy call, we all are asking our clients, how is this going to fail? Why would this fail? And that unearths a lot more of your risks, of course, creates visibility to problems that are going on there. Again, just a pro tip, that little question can dramatically transform a pitfall that you were about to and the team go into. The other kind of important thing from a mutual plan perspective, many of you have probably seen me do a ton of presentations on GIGO, like garbage in, garbage out, or data validation. So you can see like this example here was assigned to Barry, and Barry was supposed to be doing some stuff here. Well, whatever was collected here is automatically then generates dynamic tasks for two internal team members to review that data immediately before you accept it. And so when you think about mutual plans, it's also about not getting into the pitfalls that always happen, which is people give you stuff, no one looks at it, they wait 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden the day that we're supposed to meet about it or implement it or configure it, it's all garbage. And so the process is about keeping people and being timely with feedback is very, very critical in kind of a mutual plan based ecosystem. Make sense, team? Like this is why the mutual plan, and it also, just quite frankly, gives you a centralized place to build value and enhance it and tweak it over time to be even more successful. And of course, tracking your dates, all sorts of things. I just like to bring these to life because a mutual plan itself alone can do a tremendous amount of create tremendous amount of visibility for your team, and just obviously reporting and all sorts of who owns what, when, where, all that jazz. You guys are smart, you get it. So the first one, mutual plans. So the second one, phase journeys. So we've met with some clients, or I've coached people just in general, that it's kind of an overwhelming, like they're like, all right, we're going to onboard you, and it's like, these 8,000 things need to happen, and it's very overwhelming to the customer as they're doing it. And again, just we like to try to take everything using those mutual plans or whatever and just break some things up. Now you might be like, Joe, why are you breaking it up? That's we want to get it done. Well, let's be honest, everybody here. Let's get personal. Um, it's an emotional journey when you're onboarding a client, not only for your team but also for the client, because depending on how long the onboarding is, you're trying to keep the will, the minds, the hearts of the individual positive during this journey, right? So you have to kind of work that into it too. People are not robots. Everything is not done by AI. So you have to create an ecosystem where we can have some celebrations and some positive moments. I will throw into this too. Of course, I assume if you're deploying technology, like you're having testing periods and all that stuff, which obviously would be different milestones, etc. But a thing we have a lot of clients do, especially if they're trying to create a crescendo moment, I call them, which is a celebration point. So when you're onboarding the customer, if you can get to a certain milestone where you can showcase whatever you're doing to leadership, the people in essence who more than likely cut the check, to celebrate not only them doing a good job picking you as a vendor, but also it's celebrating and positively affecting the onboarding team because they're being celebrated, to be able to showcase something even before it's live. I'm just whatever it is, like, can create a tremendous amount of positivity and upswing to continue the onboarding experience. It also is a backdoor way of getting leadership additional buy-in, and also any maybe potential things that were misunderstood. It's caught at that point in time and creates the visibility as to what you're working on. You see where I'm getting at here? So it's a celebration, but it also creates visibility in case some of the leadership wanted something a little bit different than this. This gives you a celebration and visibility to early feedback, so that in 4 weeks or wherever X time period, you don't get shut down at the end. Like, why is it this? And you get the leadership shut down again managing your visibility. You can create visibility with the internal stakeholders if you structure it correctly, right? Quick wins. Let's be successful in quick wins. Make sense, team? I think you guys are good. You're doing good. I'm proud of everybody. All right, next one, structured data. This one, I think it's probably one of the most straightforward, but highly missed. So a lot of times when you're onboarding to create visibility on the client and the data and all the things that are going on, we really encourage you to have standardized ways of collecting that data. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, because oh, so yeah. So back to my little joke earlier about selling into healthcare. So if you're providing any services to healthcare, financial services, anybody like that, you're going to have a very limited opportunity to work with their IT departments. So you got a very short period of time of their attention, how much they care about you. It's not much at all. And I understand they got a lot of things on their plate, right? But what I mean by all of that is when you get to bat, you better swing correctly. You better get the data you need, because the chances of you being able to air quote go to the well 55 times over the next 2 months is not going to happen, right? And there's only one faster track to churn and being not used, is when the company you just sold's IT department is like, we don't like this group. Like that is the death nail of a service provider and or a software provider. You make one or two individuals in the IT department sideways, you're done. It's over. Um, and it can be over overtly, meaning we stop onboarding immediately, or it just elongates the onboarding experience dramatically. And so when you're doing these kinds of onboardings, whatever it is, product, service, we have a lot of device companies, like all sorts of kinds of clients. The the point there is make sure you make it easy and make sure the data is structured in an optimized way for them to make it as easy as possible for that group, plus as easy for you to capture it. I also will share, if you are a SaaS kind of like product, or even we have like robotics kind of groups too, like the data when you're capturing it from the client during the structured data during the onboarding, if you structure it a certain way, a lot of times you can just import that automatically right into your product and solution, dramatically uh, lowering your onboarding time and costs. And then also, obviously, you're able to then show the client, hey, look, it's already doing this, right? More visibility back to them again for each of the milestones. So seeing the data, making it easy for them dramatically affects kind of the progress, because you can put these touch points or data collections where they need to be to make sure that the deal is progressing at the pace you need it to be. That's a little bit more for like a heavier, complex or data driven product or solutions. um Fourth one, so we call these roles ROLES, like it is here. And so this is typically what, and maybe I should have put this one a little bit higher, even though it's one of the five, but this kind of relates to making sure there's accountability. What was that word? Accountability during onboarding? Ah, come on, Joe. Um, so the point being here is we frequently want our clients to, if they're more complex and they got a lot of different, like, who are the roles, ROLES, that are involved in the onboarding? Well, you got your internal champ, then you might have IT, you might have finance, right? And so you want to break those roles out, because again, as I mentioned, a lot of clients want to service them or onboard them in a certain experience. So we can create visibility by those stakeholders to make sure that they are okay with the process and what we're achieving. And so a lot of this again starts at the beginning of the relationship. But right now, you can clearly, if I gave you 10 seconds, you could literally write down the top 7 roles that are involved in your onboarding, right? And when I typically say this, obviously I'm talking more the client side. I hope you know your own on your side, but some don't. So you can do the 7 on your side and the 7 on the client side. And then the onboarding experience, some of your milestones, some of your data collection, everything is more role based or OLE based, which creates you an opportunity to have visibility by all the different user types within the organization and or leadership types. So it's a powerful tool because by defining by role, you can clearly communicate those expectations to those stakeholders as their role so that they have more accountability to the team. Because what you're able to show them is if we don't get this information, Frank or Sarah, this is going to hold us up. And that holding up hurts our company and your company dramatically and the other stakeholders on your team. You see what I'm kind of getting at here, team? So a lot of the times by creating the visibility by role, an actual person's name can unlock faster response and accountability of getting things done because it's not just a nebulous idea that we're onboarding this X thing. And it's um in sales, if there's any salespeople, we sometimes get quite a bit of like VPs of sales or CROs in here because onboarding sometimes falls underneath them. It's the old classic mutual plan slash verbal contract, right? Like the old verbal contract, like, hey, Tiffany, are you going to get me this by this? Because you are acting as the CRO on this or CFO on this onboarding. These are the expectations we have of you. And as long as we get them by here, we're going to be able to help your team deliver and get all this value very quickly because TTV, the race to value, is what everybody's here for, right? So in order to get to that, I need you to do this and do this now. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. Clear roles and responsibilities. I call them roles. And it also then works very well when you tie that into obviously a mutual plan by role, right? Or just a general one, but you guys get what I'm saying. Simple little changes for your reporting, because if the data is structured correctly, I can say it correctly, you then are going to get the ability to then generate reports, metrics, all your ROI kind of concepts then all flow pretty cleanly to, well, this I kind of talked about, but there's two sides to the environment. It's just a very important thing. I've kind of beat this a lot because everything's mutual. But again, it's the old clients don't know what they don't know. So coach them and educate them. I don't know how many times I'm trying to help people. They tell me about their product and then they're like, we're onboarding it into this company. And I'm like, do they even know what the hell your tool does? Like why your tool is being onboarded into their group? Like what's the why? And a lot of it, especially if you're onboarding like emerging technology, the customer doesn't even understand what you guys do in a lot of cases. So in onboarding, we frequently have a lot of education that is going on. And they're also scared as crap of what anything new. Just we'll go with that, right? Makes sense. All right, so the last one, you kind of, if you were playing the word game, you kind of knew it by how I was framing for. The last one, of course, is you got to create, if you got to have the, if you're going to build a new home, anybody here, make sure if you want a basement, you do that at the beginning, but you don't finish it, right? Exactly. So same exact methodology here is if you build your mutual plan and your communication and collaboration strategy correctly, and it's structured the way that we've been talking about by different user types and actionable items, then all of that then becomes available to be reported. And if you're new to this hustle, this can obviously be very, very simple just in Excel. But obviously, as you get more complicated and you got more, users and flows and all these kinds of things, obviously having everything centralized allows you to be reporting against that. And of course, my big thing, continuous improvement, which is always, what it's about, because there's a fear sometimes in onboarding that you have to strive for perfection right out the gate. And I will argue that it's not, because the longer you wait, the greater the risk to your current clients, your clients today are. So it's starting simple and honestly talking to your customers as you're onboarding them. Did this make sense? Kind of like a recap. Did this make sense? Are there things here that would, use them to improve your onboarding experience? And then when you have everything centralized, like we've been talking about, then you can make one adjustment and the benefits hit everybody in the future. And so it, none of these are groundbreaking. I'm not saying puff the magic dragon, Joey, you're a genius. Like anything in business, it's the execution which matters. It's not the concepts. And so by creating a simple environment to allow you to do this and repeatedly execute it, that's what it's all about. And it's execution on the internal side, and of course, execution on the external side, right? Both sides of the equation, and a ton of communication and collaboration, which again, centralized to create that visibility for all elements on it. So I encourage you to take some of these elements and literally look at your process, scorecard your process, and then start to increment some of these or implement and increment these elements into your processes to drive that value. Okay. I know 100%, like if you trust me or our experience, you do these principles and this one, I can guarantee you're going to hit. I'll do money back guarantee. Um, like operational efficiency based on structure and having that visibility to cut off problems before they become big problems saves your team. Just think of how much time your team is wasting iterating through the same things 5 times, 10 times. Like I don't even have to try. Like we can get you to 30%. Like it just literally is that when you do it right. And I'm not selling here. I just know. So what I'm getting at is if you take and trust these principles, that's literally it's like getting a free FTE. So, and then more if you're scaling, obviously. So I appreciate everybody's time. I do obviously if some of you have been on before. If anybody on this call wants to just literally brainstorm, you're like, we sell cranes and we're onboarding cranes into aquariums only. And, because we move dolphins and walruses with the cranes. You're like, we're so unique. You're not. I appreciate it. It's an interesting thing, but we help coach, like literally not buying our product. You can sign up for a 30-minute time with me, brainstorm with me, and I'll give you what I believe are 10 meaningful things that you could do around that to have greater visibility and drive. Clearly, if it makes sense to that you need a solution and all that, clearly everybody knows we have a world-class product. But the point is I'm also just trying to have everybody have better onboarding experiences because you make more money, your team makes more money, and your companies are more successful, which is what really matters at the end of the day. So again, Joey Connect, appreciate the time, everybody. We will be packaging this bad boy up as usual and shipping it out. And I'll also include some additional resources for mutual plans. I appreciate the time, everybody. Thanks.